Hi, it's Dwyer, DwyerFootballNews.com, DwyerVIP.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Today is November 26, 2012. Let's recap Week 12 of the National Football League, or rather, point out some facts that you need to know. Keeping in mind that where you make money is on the gap between public perception and what's actually happening, right? Speaking of what's actually happening, let me just briefly recap how I did on my premium picks, which are available online every week. Indianapolis covered against the Buffalo Bills. They won that game. They handled the point spread. New England covered against the New York Jets. They won the game. They handled the point spread, but we were not perfect. The Rams in Arizona did not stay under. That game actually went over, even though neither team had 400 yards of total offense. So our premium picks, we were 2-1. Had you invested with us, you would have made money. Okay, let's talk about things to consider in Week 12. In my opinion, the biggest story of Week 12, and I understand this might not be reflected in the stats, is the fact that quarterback Colin Kaepernick has taken over for the San Francisco 49ers. Let me just tell you, folks, this is a monumental change. You need to keep an eye on this going forward. Right now, Kaepernick took over last week when the 49ers beat the Chicago Bears. But understand that was different because at the time, starter Alex Smith was hurt. So while Kaepernick got the start, he really wasn't the starter. Now I know that Jim Harbaugh has said he's going to make up his decision later this week on who's the starter. In my opinion, the team is so much better with Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick brings not only an arm and not only a willingness to throw the ball downfield, but he also brings a level of ball fakes and athleticism that, quite frankly, Alex Smith can't match on his best day. You need to keep an eye on this guy. The team's already an elite team. Understand the 49ers came within an eyelash of winning the NFC last year. They lost to the Giants, the eventual Super Bowl winners, in the NFC Championship game. They have the defense. Alton Smith, quite frankly, is putting up record-setting numbers in terms of starting a career with a huge number of sacks. That defense is solid up front and in the secondary, right? They rushed the passer with the best of them. They kept New Orleans yesterday to less than 300 yards of total offense, and of course, they were able to get defensive touchdowns. But understand, the offense has talent that has been neglected. Michael Crabtree won the Biletnikoff Award in college. He's an elite wide receiver if they can get someone who can throw him the ball. With Alex Smith, he's a possession receiver. Right? They're leaving some of his talent on the table. You have Randy Moss. If you look at the numbers, Randy Moss is clearly a Hall of Fame talent. Clearly. Right? If you can throw the ball deep, you can take advantage of Randy Moss's talents, right? He's a neglected talent. Understand, too, that the 49ers already have one of the game's very best tight ends, Vernon Davis, Pro Bowl level tight end. If you have a quarterback who can spread the ball around, not just short but deep, that offense becomes a juggernaut. Keep in mind, they already have a superstar at running back. Not a good running back, a superstar at running back. Before you throw stones, just look at the yards per carry for Frank Gore. Right? So, if Kaepernick, who wears, perhaps appropriately, John Elway's number 7, if Kaepernick can spread the ball around, I think this team has a higher upside with him than it does with Alex Smith. We'll find out in the weeks ahead. Kaepernick, understandably, is a young quarterback who will get better with experience. But even without experience, I would argue that the talent is obvious. I think he's worth a look. Also going forward, something you need to consider. In my opinion, North Turner is done in San Diego. San Diego was up yet again this last week, and again they blew the game against the Baltimore Ravens at home. And I mean blew the game, right? I didn't bet on the game, but I can tell you gamblers are upset. They should have won this game with San Diego. San Diego blows the game in regulation, then of course proceeds to lose in overtime. If you look at the numbers, they really lost by more than the score. Understand that Baltimore had more than 150 more offensive yards than the San Diego Chargers. Understand Baltimore had 7 more first downs than the San Diego Chargers. About the only thing close in this game was the score, right? North Turner, quite frankly, is on the verge of losing this team. If you're a veteran football player, knowing that the sport is violent, knowing that these hits shorten your career, are you really going to put out the rest of the year if you know the coach is gone? You're not making the playoffs, and your effort might really be ignored, right? Take a hard look at San Diego. They might be a team that, quite frankly, folds up the tent early, and if that happens, they might be a team that you can bet against later in the season. Okay, let's talk about teams too that, quite frankly, are being unfairly dissed. Now, I know that I made money recommending the New England Patriots over the New York Jets, right? Quite frankly, the line I got was 7.5. Had I waited until kickoff, I could have gotten a better line of 7. But even taking the Patriots and laying a touchdown or more against the Jets in New York, a divisional opponent, you still covered that spread comfortably. However, let's look under the hood. I know the New York media is hard, and I know that they're hard on the Jets, and I know Rex Ryan's getting a lot of heat, and I know Mark Sanchez is getting a lot of heat. Let me just say this, while you're giving the Jets a lot of heat, understand that the Jets had more than 400 yards of total offense against the New England Patriots. Understand that the Jets, yes, Mark Sanchez's Jets, had the same number of first downs as the Patriots. Understand that the Jets had the greater time of possession. I'll say this, the Jets lost this game, right? The Patriots are a juggernaut. But the Jets, even without Revis, are still talented, right? As you write off the team, and as the lines on Jet games become even more unbalanced, just understand there's opportunity there, right? Don't just look at the final score. Look at the actual box score. Don't let your eyes deceive you, right? Also, let's talk about another team that's enigmatic. Many people believe this team could win the AFC. This team won on Thanksgiving. It was the first game. The team I'm talking about are the Houston Texans. Now, let me just say this. I'm more of a gambler than a fan. Texas got blown up by Green Bay earlier this year, right? Aaron Rodgers had a field day. He was feasting on the Houston Texan defense. Well, all I can say is what I want you to do is to take a hard look at the numbers from Thanksgiving. Yes, the Texans won in overtime. Yes, the Texans had more than 500 yards of total offense. But would it surprise you to know that the Detroit Lions had more than 500 yards of total offense? In fact, the Lions outgained the Texans. The Lions had more first downs than the Texans. You want to know the Lion conversion rate on third down? 9 of 18. Now, as we think about the Texans, I know you're salivating at the opportunity to perhaps take them in some changing of the guard in the AFC. Just consider the teams they might face in the playoffs, down the road. The teams that stand between them and a Super Bowl. One of them has a quarterback named Tom Brady. Right? My point to you is simply, if Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford are lighting up the Texans for big yardage, and you have an opportunity this week to look at the box score online of this Detroit game, then what leads you to believe that Tom Brady won't be able to test that Houston Texan pass defense? Right? My point to you is simply this. As much as we all love Arian Foster, as much as Andre Johnson has turned back the clock, isn't this team vulnerable to a high-powered passing offense? Aren't there teams like that? Aren't there passers in the AFC? Brady, Peyton Manning, who can test a secondary that gives up the kind of yardage the Texans have given up in big games. Let me also say this too. Okay, and I'm just talking about elite teams now that many fans are interested in as perhaps having a chance to do damage down the road. Don't you have a problem in Chicago right now? I was online on one of these sites, might have been Yahoo Sports, might have been ESPN, and they had an article on whether Jay Cutler belongs in the MVP discussion. Let me just say this. Chicago rolled all over Minnesota this week. Or did they? Would it surprise you that 1 week after being awful against the San Francisco 49ers, and let's face it, the Niners are one of the teams that if you're a Bear fan, you have to look out for in the postseason. Right? After looking awful against the San Francisco 49ers, they play the Vikings, who were already sputtering. And would it surprise you to know that even though Chicago won that game and did so convincingly on the scoreboard, that they had less than 300 yards total offense? Folks, that's a problem. Your offense needs to be solved. Not only that, Matt Forte, look at his numbers lately. Ooh. Plus, he might be injured now. Let's say Jay Cutler's at his best. Other than Brandon Marshall, who else is he going to throw to? Let me also point out, too, that when your wide receivers are that skewed, when Brandon Marshall's a superstar, and then everyone else is not plan B, everyone else is plan C, you really need to ask yourself, if you hit the playoffs and opposing teams are able to give Brandon Marshall the special attention that Pro Bowl wide receivers get in the playoffs, who's Jay Cutler going to throw the ball to? Do you have other receivers who can step up and make things happen? Chicago fans, let me hear from you. Let me also talk about a team that, quite frankly, it's hard to bet on them. But it's also hard to bet against them. Now, I was on the sidelines on this game, but let me just say this. Dallas, what's going on? The Cowboys got worked by the Washington Redskins. Okay, fine. Right? And, of course, it's disappointing for Cowboy fans because the Cowboys will get worked, as they did in this game, at home. In other words, the Cowboys don't seem to have a distinct home field advantage. But let me say this. Just like with the Jets, while I'm hating on the Cowboys and saying, oh man, this team's in the toilet, while the press is ripping the Cowboys, while we're hearing that Jerry Jones shouldn't be meddling and, things like that, just understand that the Cowboys somehow put up over 450 yards total offense. Just understand that the Cowboys converted 8 of their first downs. The Cowboys had the same number of first downs, in fact, as the Washington Redskins. As you look at the Cowboys, understand that while they're sputtering along, if you look at the numbers, they're still a dangerous team. Teams like this, all I'm saying is, if you like a team that's playing the Cowboys, just understand that as ridiculous as the Cowboys are, they have a knockout punch. Right? One of these weeks, the Cowboys are going to put it together and surprise all of us. Yesterday, you saw what the Giants did to the Green Bay Packers. Understand that this Cowboy team, as underachieving as they are, actually beat the Giants this season. Right? This is a Cowboy team that, quite frankly, is like that fighter who seems to have problems, doesn't quite have it together. But every now and then, the guy can knock you down. Right? This Cowboy team, my advice to you is to proceed with caution. Whether you're betting on the Cowboys or whether you're betting against the Cowboys. If you're a conservative bettor and you see Dallas, my advice to you is to cross the street. Don't deal with them. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. Let's make this a great football conversational board. Leave your comments for me here online so we can all see them. And I'll be back later in the week with premium picks once I crunch a few more numbers. Okay, thanks for stopping by, and I appreciate your support. Let me know what you think on these games. Let me know what you think on upcoming games. Let me know what you think on my comments. Thanks.